Morning, boys and girls. We are going to be reading a new chapter from Farmer Boy today, chapter 14, called The Strange Dog. So yesterday you heard about the tin peddler who was Nick Brown. He'd come to town and sell different items. So today we're going to hear about the strange dog. Please join me. Now, Nick Brown had said that New York horse buyers were in the neighborhood. You heard that briefly in the last chapter. So every night, Father gave the 4-year-old colts a special careful grooming. The 4-year-olds were already perfectly broken in, and Almanzo wanted so much to help groom them that Father actually let him. But he was allowed to go into their stalls only when Father was there. Carefully, Almanzo combed and brushed their shining brown sides, and their smooth round haunches and slender legs. He combed and braided their black manes and their long black tails. With a little brush, he oiled their curved hooves, till they shone black as mother's polished stove. He was careful never to move suddenly and startle them. He talked to them while he worked, in a gentle, low voice. The colts nibbled his sleeve with their lips and nuzzled at his pockets for the apples he brought them. They arched their necks when he rubbed their velvety noses, and their soft eyes shone. Almanzo knew that in the whole world there was nothing so beautiful, so fascinating as beautiful horses. When he thought that it would be years and years before he could have a little colt to teach and take care of, he could hardly bear it. But this is a step in the right direction. How was Father showing that he trusted him? He's having Almanzo help out, but only when he's there, so there's a balance. Now, one evening, the horse buyer came riding into the barnyard. He was a strange horse buyer. Father had never seen him before. He was dressed in city clothes of machine-made cloth, and he tapped his shining tall boots with a little red whip. His black eyes were close to his thin nose. His black beard was trimmed into a point, and the ends of his mustache were waxed and twisted. Black eyes, thin nose, black beard with little point. What do you think of this man? He sounds like an evil cartoon or something. He's got a red whip, black eyes, pointy thin nose. It sort of sounds like he is probably a bad person just by his appearance. It may not be true. But he says he looked very strange, standing in the barnyard, and he was thoughtfully twisting one end of his mustache into sharper points. Now he's seeming even more like a cartoon villain, right? Twisting his mustache into little points. Father led out the colts. They were perfectly matched Morgans, exactly the same size, the same shape, and the same bright brown all over, with the same white stars on their foreheads. They arched their necks and picked up their little feet daintily. 4 years old in May, sound in wind and limb, not a blemish on them, Father said. We could say that they have a clean bill of health. That would be a good use of our idiom for the week. Broken to drive, double or single. They're high-spirited, full of ginger, and gentle as kittens. A lady could drive them. Almanzo listened. He was excited, but he remembered carefully everything that Father and the horse buyer said. He's picking up on everything. He's not allowed to speak, but he's taking everything in. Someday, he would be trading horses himself. So that's the reason. He wants to learn how to do this one day. He wants to do the same thing Father does. Now the buyer felt the colt's legs. He opened their mouths and looked at their teeth. Remember I think we learned this in Black Beauty, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Means like you can actually tell a horse's age by looking at their teeth. So you shouldn't like judge your gift that you're getting and say, oh, well, how old is this? I don't really want this. Now, Father had nothing to fear from that. He had told the truth about the colt's age. Then the buyer stood back and watched while Father took each colt on a long rope and made it walk, trot, and gallop in a circle around him. Look at that action, Father said. The shining black manes and tails rippled in the air. Brown lights flowed over their smooth bodies, and their delicate feet seemed hardly to touch the ground. Round and round they went like a tune. The buyer looked. He tried to find fault, but he couldn't. The colts stood still, and Father waited. Finally, The buyer offered $175 apiece for each one. Father said he couldn't take less than $225. So $50 more is what he wants. Almanzo knew he said that because he actually wanted $200. So this is very similar to what Mother and Nick Brown were doing yesterday in yesterday's reading. She would ask for a little bit more so that he would go down. That's a good way of bartering. Now, Nick Brown had told him that horse buyers were paying too much, or paying that much, sorry. So $200 is what horse buyers have been paying. Then Father hitched both colts to the buggy. He and the buyer climbed in, and away they went down the road. The colts' heads were high, their noses stretched out, their manes and tails blew in the wind of their speed, and their flashing legs moved all together, as though the colts were one colt. That's great. They are really wonderful colts. The buggy was gone out of sight in a minute. Almanzo knew he must go on with the chores. He went into the barn and took the pitchfork. Then he put it down and came out to watch for the colt's return. When they came back, Father and the buyer had not agreed on the price. Father tugged at his beard and the buyer twisted his mustache. The buyer talked about how expensive it was to take the colts to New York and about the low prices there. So he's buying colts and then he's going to sell them again in New York, or New York City probably. He had to think of his profit. The best he could offer, he said, was $175. And we know that he actually will spend $200. Father said, I'll split the difference. How about $200? And that's my last price. The buyer thought about it and answered, I don't see my way clear to pay that. All right, Father said, no hard feelings, and we'll be glad to have you stay to supper. So the horse buyer says, not going to buy him for $200. And Father says, okay, well, he's not going to go any lower, but you can stay for supper. So he began to unhitch the colts, and then the buyer said, over by Saranac, they're selling even better horses than these for $175. You think that's true? I don't think so. I think he's lying. Father didn't answer. He just unhitched the colts and led them toward their stalls. Then the buyer said, all right, $200 it is. I'll lose money by it, but here you are. He took a fat wallet out of his pocket and he gave Father $200 to bind the bargain. Bring them to town tomorrow and get the rest. So the colts were supposed to be $200 a piece. He only gave $200 for one of them, but he's going to take both of them for now. The colts were sold at Father's price. The buyer would not stay to supper. He rode away, and Father took the money to Mother in the kitchen. Mother exclaimed, you mean to say we must keep all that money in the house overnight? It's too late to take it to the bank, Father said. We're safe enough. Nobody but us knows that the money's here. So why is Mother worried? $200 is a lot of cash to lay around in the house. She wants to put it in the bank because she feels safer with it being there. I declare I shan't sleep a wink. The Lord will take care of us, Father said. The Lord helps them that help themselves, Mother replied. I wish to goodness that money was safe in the bank. She'd feel much better if it was there. It was already past chore time, and Almanzo had to hurry to the barn with the milk pails. If cows are not milked at exactly the same time, night and morning, they will not give so much milk. They need to be on a schedule. Then there were the mangers and stalls to clean and all the stock to feed. It was almost 8 o'clock before everything was done, and Mother was keeping supper warm. Now, supper time was not as cheerful as usual. There was a dark, heavy feeling about that money. Mother had hidden it in the pantry. Then she hid it in the linen closet. After supper, she began setting the sponge for tomorrow's baking and worrying again about the money. Her hands flew. The bread sponge made little plopping sounds under her spoon, and she was saying, it don't seem as though anybody'd think to look between sheets in the closet, but I declare, what is worrying her? All this money. She thinks, what if somebody found it? She says, what's that? They all jumped. They held their breaths and listened. Something or somebody's prowling round this house? Mother breathed. You think somebody knows about the money? All you could see when you looked at the windows was blackness outside. Psh, 'twant anything, Father said, which is like, psh. That's actually a sound. Actually, we're going to talk about that next week. Onomatopoeia. It's a word that looks like it sounds. And he says, 'twant, which I think is, it wasn't anything. I tell you, I did hear something, Mother said. I didn't, Father said. Royal, you go look, Mother said. Now Royal opened the kitchen door and peered into the dark. After a minute, he said, it's nothing but a stray dog. It's just a dog outside, a stray dog, meaning it doesn't have an owner. There's the whole family hiding. They think it's a person who's intruding. Drive it away, said Mother. Royal went out and drove it away. Almanzo wished he had a dog, but a little dog digs up the garden and chases hens and sucks eggs, and a big dog may kill sheep even. Mother always said there was stock enough on the place without a dirty dog. She set away the bread sponge. Almanzo washed his feet. He had to wash his feet every night when he went barefoot. Similar to washing hands, but you don't usually think of your feet getting dirty, but he's running around barefoot. He was washing them when they all heard a stealthy sound on the back porch. Mother's eyes were big. Royal said, it's only that dog. He opened the door. At first they saw nothing, and Mother's eyes got bigger. Then they saw a big, thin dog cringing away in the shadows. His ribs showed under his fur. Oh, Mother, that poor dog, Alice cried. Please, Mother, can't I give him just a little bit to eat? Oh, goodness, child, yes, Mother said. You can drive him away in the morning, Royal. So they're going to take care of him for the evening. Alice set out a pan of food for the dog. He dared not come near it while the door was open, but when Almanzo shut the door, they heard him chewing. Mother tried the door twice to make sure it was locked. Now the dark came into the kitchen when they left it with the candles, and the dark looked in through the dining room windows. Kind of interesting, the dark looked in. So it's just entering this house. Mother locked both dining room doors, and she even went into the parlor and tried the parlor door, though it was always kept locked. Why do you think she's locking all the doors this way? That's right, the money. Now Almanzo lay in bed a long time, listening and staring at the dark. But at last he fell asleep, and he did not know what happened in the night until Mother told it the next morning. She had put the money under Father's socks in the bureau drawer. But after she went to bed, she got up again and put it under her pillow. She did not think she would sleep at all, but she must have, because in the night something woke her. She sat bolt upright in bed. Father was sound asleep. The moon was shining, and she could see the lilac bush in the yard. Everything was still. The clock struck 11. Then Mother's blood ran cold, which means she's scared. She heard a low, savage growl. What is it? She got out of bed and went to the window. The strange dog stood under it, bristling and showing his teeth. He acted as though somebody was in the woodlot. Mother stood listening and looking. It was dark under the trees, and she could not see anyone. But the dog growled savagely at the darkness. Mother watched. She heard the clock strike midnight, and after a long time it struck 1 o'clock. The dog walked up and down by the picket fence for a whole hour. He's growling, and he is nervous about something or someone out there. At last, he lay down, but he kept his head up and his ears pricked, listening. Now, this is not their pet, but he sure is acting like it. He's trying to protect them, basically. Mother went softly back to bed. At dawn, the dog was gone. They looked for him, but they could not find him anywhere. But his tracks were in the yard, and on the other side of the fence, in the woodlot, Father found the tracks of 2 men's boots. So there were men. He hitched up at once before breakfast and tied the colts behind the buggy and drove to Malone. He put the $200 in the bank. He delivered the colts to the horse buyer and got the other $200 and put that in the bank too. When he came back, he told Mother, "You were right. We came very near being robbed last night." So a farmer near Malone had sold a team the week before and kept the money in his house. That night, robbers broke into his house while he was asleep. They tied up his wife and children and they beat him almost to death to make him tell where the money was, where it was hidden. They took the money and got away. That was so close to happening to them. And the money's not so important. It is important to them, but he was beaten almost to death, and that could have happened to Father. The sheriff was looking for them. "I wouldn't be surprised if that horse buyer had a hand in it," Father said. So he thinks, what if the horse buyer is actually the one who's breaking in? Or what if he is the one to give information to another group of people and he's like getting a cut of the money? Who else knew we had money in the house? Good question. Nobody else knew that the money was there. But it couldn't be proved. I made inquiry and he was at the hotel in Malone last night. Mother said she would always believe that Providence had sent the strange dog to watch over them. Providence is a word meaning like something else is leading and controlling things. So especially a belief that God is allowing certain things to happen, like maybe he placed that dog right there so that he would protect the family, the Wilder family. But this can also relate to other beliefs in something happening, not just the people making these decisions, but something else happening that is like an intervention to show, to make sure that something happens, like this Wilder family being protected. So Almanzo thought perhaps he stayed before Alice fed him. Sorry, he stayed because Alice fed him. So Alice did the right thing in feeding him. Maybe he was sent to try us, Mother said. Maybe the Lord, meaning God, was merciful to us because we were merciful to him. So maybe it was a way of like rewarding them for doing something so kind. So they were kind to this little dog, and then a kindness was repaid to them by being protected. Now they never saw the strange dog again. Perhaps he was a poor lost dog, and the food that Alice gave him made him strong enough to find his way home again. It's a nice chapter. So it's very sad that they could have been robbed. They could have been beaten up by these people who were trying to break in. But their good deed to this dog repaid them and they were protected. So that is the end of the chapter. You've got a few questions to answer, and tomorrow you won't have any chapter because you'll have a little quiz to take. I will talk to you all later. Hope you're enjoying the story. Bye.